Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director here at USTA Florida. Today, we're celebrating Juneteenth, and I can't think of a better topic for today's podcast than how can we attract, engage, and retain more Black coaches in the tennis industry, especially here in Florida. And I have a wonderful group of people who are growing tennis across the state who are going to help discuss this topic with me today. First up, we have Christopher Champion. Christopher is the head tennis professional at Play Tennis Gainesville, which is one of USTA Florida's managed facilities. Welcome to the podcast, Christopher.
Thank you, Laura. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you back. We did a podcast with you recently on summer camp, so it's good to see you again. Joining Christopher on the podcast today is John Richards. John is the president of Central Florida Tennis Management Associates. Thank you for joining us today, John.
Thank you for having me, Laura. It's great to be here.
We also have Albert Richards, who is the president of Poshrock Tennis Foundation. Thank you, Albert, for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Laura.
And last but certainly not least, we have the spectacular Ebony Moloch, who actually is one of our incredible volunteers and coaches at Fort King Tennis Center in Ocala. Welcome to the podcast, Ebony.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to dive right in. First of all, we're very happy to have all of you join the podcast. And before we get into the questions, I would love for each of you to tell the viewers a little bit about how each of you got started as a tennis coach. And Ebony, I'd love for you to start.
Okay, so thanks guys for inviting me to be a part of today's discussion. I got started playing tennis after my daughter was born. I was looking through a local tennis publication, and I noticed that it was an option to meet people, to get healthy, and to have fun. So I joined my first USTA Women's League and local Women's Day League in 2008. And I started coaching after years of volunteering with Rogi, 10U Tennis, multiple USTA Florida workshops.
Excellent. Well, we are happy that you have stayed with us for this long and you've done so many things with us. So thank you very much, Ebony, and grateful
Absolutely.
for your daughter that she keeps you involved.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, John, how about we go to you next? Tell us a little bit about how you got started as a tennis coach.
Well, I'm sure my story is going to be a little similar to my brother's, but our father was a prominent tennis player back home in the Virgin Islands, and just like any other boys, we wanted to be better than Dad. So we took the game and kind of drove us to be better than him. And after I left college, I spent 4.5 years there as the assistant coach for the Florida A&M women's team. So after I left there, I thoroughly enjoyed my experience working with the girls. And my brother was here in Orlando previous to me being here. And we both got jobs down here working at different tennis facilities. But my brother is my best friend. So, I always knew that we wanted to work together. So we decided to form our own company and create our own tennis management company. And that's where we are today. That's why we do what we do.
That's amazing. So my question for you, Albert, is your story similar to your brother, John? Is he your best friend, and who is the better tennis player?
Oh.
Well, yeah, the story is the same. Actually, it's beyond similar. It's exactly the same. We're 13 months apart. My wife is my best friend.
Oh, that is a stellar answer.
And tennis player.
You both agree Albert's the better tennis player.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's...
We agree. Oh yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, good.
If you noticed, I couched my answer very carefully. I said I believe he's the more talented of the two of us, is what I said.
Yeah.
You did say that.
Okay. I'll take that.
Yeah, that's still a compliment. Yeah. And you win on the best friend question, Albert. Very well done. Very well done.
And she might have it, so I don't know.
All right, Christopher, I want to come to you next. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started as a tennis coach?
Sure. Initially, I was a tennis player, just like pretty much everybody else in the room or on the call. I started when I was 3 years old. Learned to love the game, but actually fell in love with coaching more so than anything. Had the opportunity to kind of combine giving back to the community and coaching at the same time. So I started coaching at First Serve Miami down in Miami. Started in 2004, and since then I've been coaching.
Excellent. We're blessed to have you in Gainesville with us. All right. In today's podcast, we want to spotlight some of our Black coaches in the Florida tennis community and focus on how we can expand our outreach to support our Black coaches. How has USTA Florida supported your growth as a Black tennis coach? And then, Ebony, I have a follow-up question for you after you all answered this one. So, John, how about I go to you first on this question?
Well, one of the things that I think USDA has been at the forefront of is understanding that there is a diversity issue and that we need to do more to reach out to diverse communities, whether it be African Americans, LGBTQT, Hispanics, or Asians. I think that USDA is actually doing an excellent job of realizing that something that we need to do more in these areas and actually going to the experts and going to those communities and trying to figure out what can we do. So I think just first and foremost, realizing that, okay, maybe we need to do better in these areas is the first step to growth. And I think that USDA has done an excellent job of trying to find both, one, recognizing that it is an issue, and two, trying to find people that can help. And I think that's there on the USDA is actually on the forefront of that issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that is the first step to any progress, is saying, hey, we have a problem, right? Albert, how about I come to you next?
So, USTA Florida has been pretty good, even to us, when we, the underserved population that we have been trying to get more involved with the game. You know, even when my brother and I started going out into the community and just doing the lessons ourselves, and then figured out that wasn't a viable thing that could grow into anything other than just him and I. Then we decided to have Ebony Nutrition, one of the groups, become a NJTL and go out and get the funding so that we could provide more and we could oversee and plan and grow more. And now we're our own NJTL. And throughout those years of doing all that stuff and planning, I mean, it literally started with Shelly Licorice at USTA Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You need Ebony, and you need to stop doing what you're doing, because yes, that's good, but if you really want to make an impact or be impactful with the things that you're doing, you need to think on a grander scale. And you and your brother doing it out of the trunk of your cars is not going to be something that's going to impact the community as a whole. So it's Shelly Licorice at USTA Florida really that made where we are and what we're doing a thing. We'd have still been at each one of those communities where they doing stuff out of the trunks of our cars. So and even the iterations that USTA Florida has gone through of the programming that extend to underserved areas, because we used to furnish these places with their own nets and their own rackets and their own balls after we did these programs, and then you could check up on them in a couple of weeks and see if they needed pointers or whatever. It's been well supported throughout the years that we have been working or been in touch with USTA Florida on these things.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Christopher, you're in a unique position because you actually work for us now, but before that, you were also.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, I got hired by USTA Florida. I mean, what else can I say to that? But it's been a great opportunity throughout this process since I've been hired. I've had so many opportunities to meet with other individuals like individuals on the call right now, and as well as just get a lot of education under my belt, so that not only I can provide this opportunity for Gainesville, but be able to network with other individuals to support them as well.
You've done an excellent job with that. I think, we're super grateful. And your experience with First Serve Miami was very beneficial and helpful to us as well. So to have somebody with direct experience at an NJTL really allowed us to see things a little bit differently. Ebony, I have just a slightly different question for you, which is, as a Black woman coach, who is extremely involved. You mentioned all the different ways you've been involved over the years. How do you think USTA Florida can expand and support our communities in attracting more coaches like you?
I'd love this question because I guess I tell people this all the time, from adults and juniors, and also parents of juniors, that I believe the best way that we can attract more minority or Black coaches to help make an impact in the community is first representation. They have to see themselves in you. So I think having more minority recreational players, more high school players, more parents getting involved, because I feel that this population is already involved with league play. They're already involved with junior tournaments. So they've already bought into USTA Florida. They're already hooked with what they're doing. So like that major part is already done. But I think some people, they don't realize what's possible and how much of an impact that they can make in their community until they see themselves in a current Black or minority coach.
That's a great answer. And I love that all the players and young people that come through all of your programs, you don't realize when you're young, how big of a world it is. What you see is your own experiences and what's around you. And it's wonderful to have examples if that these young people can see and say, oh, I can do that. That person looks like me. That person comes from where I come from. I can do what they're doing. So I think that's wonderful. My next question, I want to talk a little bit about our Amplify initiative. We started that a couple years ago, and we are using that initiative to try to continue to engage our Black coaches through networking, education, and trainings. In what ways do you all think we can support and attract more Black people to be part of the Black Coaches Network here in Florida? And for this one, I'd like to start with you, Chris.
I think one of the biggest things that we need to address is making sure that there's opportunities for Black coaches to become directors.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
If you look across the state, you may not see many, and so I think that's a priority. I think that should be a priority.
I love that answer. John, you immediately said yes. So tell us more.
Well, I think first and foremost, if you're trying to foster participation with any particular group, you want to make sure that there are opportunities for advancement, career advancement. I mean, if there's a paucity of African Americans that are in management positions, that are directors of tennis, that are head pros or administrators at clubs, then what essentially in effect is demonstrating to your Black coaches is that for the entirety of their careers, they're going to be on the tennis court like sweating. So and at some point in time, people want to look for advancement, with career advancement. I mean that's with any career. And if that's what you want, then number one, we have to provide opportunities, and two, if touching back on what Ebony said, if you're trying to foster participation, highlight the success stories that you have, because we should find out who they are and highlight them, push their names and faces everywhere, because you want to demonstrate that this is possible, or it can happen, and these are the opportunities or ways that you can reach this level as well. And I think that's everybody on the call. I think that's partially our responsibility as well, to make sure that we can provide, or we can describe or clear a path for the next person that's coming through. So I think that's the best way to answer that question, if that makes sense.
Does. Ebony, do you agree? Do you have anything you would add to what John said?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think that it starts at the grassroots, and it takes like a larger pool of players at the local level to like turn and like attract other players for coaching, for volunteering, to increase that pool. And then having the representation in the community to promote Black coaches, introducing coaching profession to junior players, especially the ones that are starting to age out of junior tournament play, is also feel like is a great way to capture the next group of really good coaches, because they've been through the junior process and they've of course been coached by really great coaches from all over the state. They've played in zonals, they've played in states, they've played in nationals, all different tournaments. So they, with them aging out, to give them the opportunity to get that professional development so they can like go and be the next Chris Champion or John or Albert. So they can have that opportunity, at such a young age.
That's right. We want more Chris Champions, John Richards, and Albert Richards in the world, and Ebony's. We need the more Ebony's.
More importantly, Ebony's of the world.
We need many more Ebony's. All right, Albert, you get to bring this question home. What would you add to what's already been covered here?
I mean, I think all three of them hit it on the head, particularly, seeing, even for John and I, like being here in Central Florida, deciding that what we want to do is manage, looking for a mentor, or even, the people that were here. I mean, there's a guy at Iowa, Len Simard, that sat with us, that helped, that would help us with our resumes, would tell us what to do. And he would invite us over, and because he knew the path that we wanted to go. So he was saying, I'll help as much as I can. And thank God that they were there, and they accepted, but for people that look like us, to help people that look like us, they are none. There were none.
Yeah.
And now that we're in these positions, we have that responsibility, like my brothers, to impart on the pros that do work underneath us now that certain level of professionalism and everything that you need to get yourself to the next level. I mean, for a while, it was difficult for John and I to even hire people, because we used to be like, you're doing these things wrong. But that's part of knowing how to manage people, right? We didn't have that managerial experience, and we had to go through that 15 years ago when we were managing a facility, our first facility, and now we have municipal facilities and private facilities and stuff like that we do, that where you have to, learn that on the job experience, where you're gonna, so there's nobody that took us under the wing fully and said, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, these are the things to look out for. We just have been learning, are still learning on the job.
That's right.
And I'm trying to pay it down to everybody or anybody really that wants to come underneath our wing and work, underneath our stewardship. It's been tough, but we're here, so we're trying.
I love it. And I love that you're like, hey, we're going to pay this forward so that the next person we're going to share that knowledge and experience with. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. My next question is a question that sometimes we get, and that is, how can USTA Florida benefit from having more Black tennis coaches in the Florida tennis community? And Albert, I'm going to start with you this time. Since you were last time, we'll put you first this time.
Exactly. All right, good. How can we benefit? Well, through the outreach that John and I have been doing, I mean, athletically, these kids are the kids that are in our NJTL programs, and even today, like, we have some stuff with the Boys and Girls Club that are going now, and these kids are athletes. They're athletic, and their ability to grow is based on how often we get them in there. So I think that I'm trying to think how to put it. I mean, to grow our base with our kids and have us at the top means that the minute you walk out there, they're not seeing tennis as something that people are bringing in. They're seeing tennis as something that already exists. And my big brother played it, and now I want to play it. It's not just the footballs, it's not just the basketballs, it's not just other sports, the soccers and stuff like that exist. But even today, we walk in the gym and they're like, tennis. And we walk out the gym and they're like, what, we done already? Like, when you coming back? And if they had those tennis balls and those tennis rackets or that tennis court with a pro that was local, where would they be?
Yeah.
Right? You see how the basketball is dominated by these kids. Football is dominated by these kids. Why not tennis? I mean, if they had that from the grassroots, they're 5-6 years old till they hit 12, 13, 14. Of course, some of them are going to get weeded out, but some of them are going to stick with it. Yeah. And then we're We're going to have the TFOs. We're going to have the Swans. We're going to have the Claires. We're going to have, these kids that are coming up, the Robin Montgomerys. We're going to have these kids moving in the correct direction in a mass scale. And that would be great for the game.
It's funny. Roxanne Aaron at the ATA, when we did the podcast with her a little while ago, she said the exact same thing that you said, Albert, is, the biggest challenge is attracting kids in the Black community to sports other than football, basketball, baseball, that like tennis isn't thought of, but yet we have such great examples and athletes. So I thought that's a great insight that you shared, and it is something similar to what Roxanne said.
Yeah.
Ebony, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I mean, the initial turnoff is the startup cost for the sport, right? You got to have the rackets, you got to have the balls, you got to have, all that equipment. And if that stuff is there at the local rec centers, like it is with every other sport, then maybe they take it up instead of playing the basketball,
Built in.
Yeah, built in, exactly, yeah.
Ebony, how about you? How do you think USTA Florida can benefit by having more Black tennis coaches in our Florida tennis community?
I think USTA Florida can benefit by having representation. I know we spoke about this before, but at all levels of the organization. And I think that this will trickle down beautifully to help improve creativity, increase profits, engagement, also like having a wider range of skills and improving cultural insight. But from the first time that I ever picked up a racket and went to Fort King Tennis Center, and Lee Chalk was my coach, I had no idea what I was doing, and she just said, "Stand there. You just hold the racket. You stand there, and we'll work everything else out." But from that moment, like, to now, like, I feel that USTA Florida has and does like an amazing job with incorporating the broad idea of tennis is for all people and that anybody can play this game. Because I guess like when I started in 2008, it was no like specific beginner program. But now with like Love to Learn, it's just like, this is the way that I think like all adults should learn how to play tennis.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And just like from when I started Rogi, it was specific, but I think once USTA Florida revamped and like everything was more, workshops were just categorized by red ball, like you're just going to focus on red ball, or you're going to focus on green ball or wheelchair or adaptive. So I think USTA Florida does an amazing job with, if something is not working, we're going to figure it out and try to make this work and to get better at it. And we're going to learn from our mistakes and we're going to just make it better every time. So yeah.
Well, that's great. And, like I said, we definitely need more Ebonies, and the coaching programs that you mentioned, our community coach program. One of the biggest things we said when we put that out is that anybody can be a coach. So I think we crossed that hurdle of anybody can play, but what we hadn't really done a good job of is saying anybody can be a coach. And I think we've done some initial work on that. But what you said, Ebony, you can be a coach. I can be a coach. Like, you don't have to have, played at a certain level, whatever. Anybody can be a coach. Anybody can influence their community and really play that role. So thank you for articulating that so well. John, I'm going to come to you next. How do you think USTA Florida can benefit from having more Black tennis coaches?
Great question. I think everybody who previously answered the question kind of hit it on the head. One of the quotes that I kind of steal from my brother that he uses all the time is, diversity and inclusion fosters a more creative and innovative environment. And I think that whenever you have different people in a room, that are coming from different perspectives, it helps to kind of finitely shape everything that you're doing. And that's on a company level, but on a grassroots level, on a membership level, I mean, especially in the very beginning of the game, especially when you first get out there to work with a kid or work with an adult, you represent the game of tennis. And if you're, for example, if you're not fun, then tennis isn't fun. And if you never get to see anybody, especially in the very beginning, that resembles anything that you resonate with, then some people may get turned off by that. Some people may say, well, tennis isn't historically for me. However, if there are diverse groups of people teaching, then oh wow, maybe I shouldn't look at it this way, or maybe I should try this out and see if this is for me. And then that's how kids think. That's how people think. I mean, so I think that everybody else pretty much hit it on the head, and yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it. I think.
Awesome. Well, Christopher, again, you have an inside perspective on this because you are a member of USTA Florida staff. So, from your perspective, how do you think we can benefit from having more Black tennis coaches?
Well, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but African American people are the lowest race in terms of tennis in the state of Florida. So engaging more Black coaches within the network would immediately impact the culture. And I think that's the biggest thing that we want to talk about when we're talking about growing the game is we also want to impact the culture in a positive way so that like we discussed already, for the future, we were able to allow for more cultivation of our kids, of our students or our parents and have the opportunity to just really enjoy the game altogether.
I'm glad you brought that up, Christopher. You know, we get this data every year, which is the tennis participation report. One of the things it does is it gives us demographic data on our state, and it breaks down by race and ethnicity the population of the state versus the tennis population. And what's really interesting is, as Chris mentioned, one of the populations that has the largest disparity in terms of, you know, percent population in the state and percent population playing tennis is the Black and African American community. So when people ask me why this, you know, why are we focusing our energy here, it's very, very evident that the largest gap in representation that we have is in the African American and Black community. So it is the area that, as you all mentioned, that we have a diversity problem in, and we need to spend additional time and energy in addressing it, finding out why, and trying new ideas and new ways to bring more people in. So thank you, Christopher, for mentioning that. I think that's a really important insight.
Of course.
All right. So my next question, I know all of you are heavily involved in your communities in a number of ways, from running Special Olympics programs, growing NJTLs, and even doing like adult beginner programs and Juneteenth events. So would each of you tell us a little bit more about the steps you're taking in your communities to specifically support the growth of Black tennis? And Ebony, this time I'm going to start with you.
Okay. I guess for myself, and I guess when I talk about myself, I include my family because where I am, they are also. So they're always like with me working and volunteering. So I think to help support growth of Black tennis and in my community, so we've started a free after school tennis community program. I was able to get the city of Ocala, Parks and Recs, and head pro Jason Weiss on board. And we offered once a week free clinics. Because of the pandemic, everything stopped and hasn't gotten started back yet. But I believe after summer break, then we'll get back started. But currently, after my lessons are done, I stay on court for any juniors or beginner adults that want match play. So I try to organize match play for juniors and beginners. And then we, as a family, we try to practice and train Madison at public courts. So people in the community can see us on court and see her on court. And a lot of times they'll come over, they'll ask questions. They will give them tennis balls. We always have extra red, orange, and green balls in our bags. We've given out rackets at public courts. We invite them to come play with us, and just to come to Fort King to get information about after-school program or summer camp programs. And then we also have a great organization, Ocala Tennis Association. If there are any juniors or adults that need financial assistance, clothes, shoes, they are amazing with helping to support them financially with different leagues that they want to play or summer camp programs. So we don't ever want for someone not to play because they don't have tennis clothes or they don't have tennis shoes. So I think just being able to lay out rackets, balls, clothes, shoes, and say, "Come on court."
That's amazing.
Like you don't have to.
That's amazing.
Yes, that's like the best part I think about the sport in our local community in Marion County.
Awesome. You guys are incredible. Now you always make me want to play up there every time I talk to you.
You're
I
always
want to
welcome.
play with Ebony and her family. Awesome. Okay, I think John, you're next for this question. So tell us about what you're doing in your community.
Well, my brother and I, we're trying to use tennis as our vehicles to kind of impact our community in a positive way, and we do it in a multitude of ways. And one of the things that I'd like to, it's multifaceted what we're doing. Obviously, we have our NJTL, the Posh Rock Tennis Foundation, where we're using that to help underserved tennis communities, whether that be socioeconomic or the intellectually disabled. We're trying to make sure that we're impacting our community, not just with using tennis as our vehicle, but not just tennis. We do a lot with engaging other organizations to kind of help uplift our community. But I know we talk about that all the time, and I'll let my brother go into more detail about that. But also our approach is a little multifaceted, because one of the things that I think gets overlooked is we also have a program where one of the models of that program is Black don't always mean broke. So we have a lot of American doctors and lawyers and executives and business owners that we engage on a monthly basis, where they come out and they bring their friends out, and we have a good time where we introduce them to the game of tennis, or if they've played before, we reintroduce them to the game of tennis, and they bring their kids and their friends, and we highlight some of the businesses in the community. Every month we bring one business and they get highlighted there, and they bring their product and they get to show their product to the tennis playing community that we have at our facility. But we also want to make sure that it's not just one facet of the African American community that we're trying to impact, but and our community period, but specifically the African American community, but the other side as well that sometimes gets overlooked, and we want to make sure that we highlight them as well and bring them to our facility. And it's wonderful for us because we get to engage with people that look like us that are successful, and we're trying to marry that program with our NJTL program, so they provide the example of what you could possibly be in the community for these kids. So our approach is kind of multifaceted in that way, and I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted that program. I'm sure my brother will talk about it a little bit more in depth when it's his turn.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I was at the USPTA Florida convention, and Isu Mat was there, and he did a wonderful presentation there. And that was one of the slides he showed where it was diversity doesn't equal poverty.
Yeah.
And that perception of every diverse community is financially, at a lower class than others, and that we're all diverse in various ways. So he emphasized that point as well. And I'm glad that you brought it up. And how do we show all different facets of the communities we serve? Chris, I'm going to go to you next. I know you have a lot going on in your area. So tell us more.
Sure. So I do want to start with the support of yourself and USTA Florida. All of our non-seasonal staff are individuals of color here. And so I wanted to say that because, again, we wanted to make sure that the community understands that this is for everybody. As well as that, we do have our second year of Juneteenth happening. We've partnered up with Aces in Motion, which is a NJTL chapter here in Gainesville and with 100 Black men to help broaden our reach to make sure that, again, tennis is being brought to the community for free. You know, we want everybody to experience the game, and we're excited to be able to continue to keep offering this opportunity.
And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when we did Juneteenth last year, which was our first one, that actually did turn into a Love to Learn program with 100 Black men in the community, didn't it?
Correct. So it was very impactful, and we're looking forward to offering a similar program, or if not the same program, after the Juneteenth event as well.
Oh, awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for all that you and your team are doing there in Gainesville. Well, Albert, you're going to bring us home this time. Can you tell us more about the work that you're doing in the community alongside your brother, or any other things that you're doing that maybe he does or doesn't know about? He's your best friend.
No, hit my head. Like the that initiative, that initiative where we had wealthy people of color reintroducing them to the game and explaining to them what we do and how they could help. You know, sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they just don't know. They don't even know that we were or are a thing. I mean, they know now, and they've been helping. But I mean, even some of the boards that these people are on, you know, they help. All you do is have the conversation. And this is what we're doing, and this is where we're going. Oh, I know somebody who does that. And now you have somebody that's engaged in tennis, that loves tennis, that looks like these kids, that wants these kids to do it. We don't have to keep begging over and over and over to deaf ears. Like, these people go right to the source, or people that can make decisions, and then stuff gets done. And then we can start moving with the program. We don't have to spend 2 years trying to get into the white. We don't have to spend 2 years trying to get into Boys and Girls Clubs. We found a better mousetrap, essentially. So these people can network with people that we don't even know about, and then we come together and we create a situation that's tenable for everybody. And then, you know, you get to have your engagement with the community piece, and we get to have our engagement with the community piece. And then you come to the courts and you enjoy yourself, and we move forward. Specifically, Boys and Girls Clubs, that's been our thing that we've been trying to work on and get toward. And it looks like it might happen. It looks like things are going. So we're reaching out to underserved kids in the community, but those situations that we're targeting tend to have more Black and brown kids in them. So, you know, those underserved portions of the community are where we're going to target those bigger portions of kids. Well, you know, kids go to the Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
You know, kids go to the Ys and stuff like that. So we're trying to get where we can have a bigger impact, because we stay local, and we just stay local. We stay around Fort Gatlin, we stay around Ocala, we stay around Winter Garden, like those areas. But how can we be more impactful? How can we help USTA Florida grow tennis to those specific places? Our NJTL gets out there and engages everybody that we need to engage, that looks like these people who said, oh, I want to help. And if they can't donate their time, we said, hey, this is how you can. If you donate this much, it helps this many kids. This program, you can run this program for the year with just this small donation. 1 day a week at this facility, bam, bam, bam. That could be your thing. And if you have a friend, you could do 2 days a week for the year. And this money is nothing, you know, well, we think it's nothing to these people, but it's a great
right.
that they can write off on. And then they get to say, because they are. They literally, your money is directly impacting the lives of these kids. And that feels good to them. It's not like they don't, like, you know, any big organization, you know, the money gets filled down. You see a direct thing. That money goes to them kids. That money goes to those kids. And they like that feeling. They like that personal feeling. Oh, you want to come to the program? Bring them out
right
to the
there. Yes. And I think that's so important, is people do want to see the impact that they have, you know, and you provide that to them.
And all the stuff that happens around the courts, if we do any of the events that we have at the courts where we know the NJTL kids be there, you know, all the people that are doing it, and all the people that support Gatlin in particular, because that's where the majority of our foundation events occur, people come out and they love having the kids there. And, you know, it's a really good feeling around all the events. I mean, and even the companies and firms and stuff that we work with, the financial literacy, Ebony, the world, you know, the nutritional portion, everybody supports everybody in all the things that we're doing. And it really does make for a community thing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have my last question for today, and we're going to put our crystal ball out there and kind of see what future state looks like. So this is a tough one. Thinking toward the future, how do you think Black coaches, and possibly having more Black coaches, will impact the overall Florida tennis community in the future? And John, this one comes to you first.
Okay, so I think if I'm being hopeful, I think that having more Black tennis coaches can create more Black head pros and more Black directors of tennis and more Black administrators and more Black directors of parks and more Black country club directors. And if we can increase the one level, hopefully, rising tide raises all boats. And also, if you can create more Black tennis coaches, then hopefully we can reach also backwards and grab more Black tennis students and create more Black tennis players. So hopefully, if we can create more coaches, then we can create more directors and we can create more participants. If hopefully that is what I would like to see happen, and that is what my brother and I are going to try to use our positions and our influence to help create if we can. And again, not just African Americans, but anybody who wants to learn or wants to be in the position that we are in, or wants to become coaches or wants to be a part of the game. It's our goal to kind of reach backwards and help push the ceiling forwards. So that's our goal.
That's great. That's a great vision, I think. Chris, you're next. What do you see the impact being on the future of Florida tennis?
I think it goes back to just the culture and then comfortability for individuals wanting to play the sport. If you don't mind, I like to reference King Richard, the movie, and if you see, and I'm sure if you ask any other Black junior player or tournament player, we do feel uncomfortable at times, and so being able to diversify the sport is going to allow us to feel more comfortable and in turn grow the game for everybody.
That's a great comment. And that movie is awesome. If you haven't
Yes,
seen
it
it,
is.
highly recommend. Okay, who's next? Ebony, you are up next. How do you think Black coaches will impact the Florida tennis community in the future?
Okay, first I'll start with the topic, the comment from Chris. So my daughter was just at a tennis camp this morning, and usually she's the only African American that is at a tennis camp. And she, for some reason, this time specifically, she felt like even more out of place. And she texted me, and I said, we've done this before. This is just something that we do. And I said, more than anything, you look at the positives from the day and you count that more than how you feel at this moment. So, just today, we just had this conversation this morning. But I think with the future, I think Black tennis coaches will impact Florida tennis community in the future by increasing diversity across the board, which is what we've all agreed upon. Supporting those that are currently in our network and also those that will soon follow. I think increasing awareness to change and continue to develop a narrative that tennis is a sport for all people and tennis is attainable for all people. And it doesn't stop just on court, but like John and Albert and Chris have said, you have directors, you have instructors, you have coordinators, you have marketing. Like it's so much more than just being on court, the way that we can all impact the sport.
That's such a great observation. And of course, I'm really sorry to hear about the experience your daughter has. I think one of the things Chris mentioned earlier that, he has done an amazing job at having a diverse staff at Play Tennis Gainesville so that we make sure our participants, feel like they see themselves. And I think to every tennis director out there, anyone who's listening to this podcast, it's something I have to be very mindful of here is if you look around and you see that everyone in the room looks like you or looks the same, then you need to be aware that somebody different coming into that room is going to feel very out of place. And you really have to ask some tough questions about the experience that you're creating and then, how you can shift that dynamic. And so I think I appreciate you sharing that story about your daughter because I think it is important for people to be mindful of those things when they look around and say, what does this room look like? And what is somebody going to feel like who comes in here? Whether it's, a little girl, somebody from the Black community, somebody who's LGBTQ, are there people that, really look like them or have the same experiences? So I think that's something we can all take away and say, be mindful of that going forward. And how do we make things better and those experiences better? Because your daughter is such a wonderful human and you're such a great tennis family. It would stink to have that experience influence her negatively going forward.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go next to Albert. And I think, Albert, you are going to bring us home on this podcast. So how do you think Black coaches will impact the Florida tennis community in the future?
All right, so I think particularly sports, this is very top down. It's actually mostly top down with everything. And Ebony, my brother and I didn't grow up on the mainland, right? We grew up on St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. Mm-hmm. And to Chris's point, if you have those people in a situation where we are at the top and people can't see us, then it becomes cultural, right? You're right, because we didn't grow up in this culture. But even when we were kids coming up, people would be like, "You play tennis? What are you doing?"
Yes.
I mean, of course, you don't play tennis. And the people that we knew and hung around, outside of the majority of our cousins and friends and everybody else, didn't really play tennis, but we did. And for us, it's, what do? You don't play tennis? No, not us. So Ebony, she'll get to it, man. Yeah, right. But not to dismiss it, Ebony, but I'm just saying, we went through the same thing as kids in a different society, a totally different society. So, but here, for us, like I said, you see that high-level athlete, that thing that Serena and Venus did, that brought all those kids that wanted to play tennis, because you saw that level of success could be attained by people that look like you. And they just put in the work. There was no magic about it. They just put in the work and they did it. And so that got the kids down here going, "Oh, we're gonna do it. But then where are we gonna do it? How are we gonna do it?" That path is not just that mountain. You gotta go one step at a time, but there are no steps there for them. So you see those people at that level, and then they come back. So the kids that do collegiate tennis and stuff like that, and then they come into the community, and we create these situations where we're now reaching back down. So now the step was there for them, the step was made for us. Now the step is going to be made for the kids. Well, at least here in Central Florida, we can do that. So we have to have that representation up there on that pro level, that representation on that collegiate coach level, so that they could reach back and get the kids that look like us. We have to have that representation in coaches, ATP, WTA level, so that they could go back to their communities, because they're not on tour, 365 days out of the year. There are weeks, or 52 weeks out of the year, the weeks where they're off, and they're back in their communities, and they should be running these programs. They should be generating that interest in those things. And we need the Chris Champions and his position running those things for USTA Florida. We need the John and Alberts outside of really the whole situation, but still close enough that we're having the discussion right now. And then our NJTLs, you guys NJTL, and all these things that are putting the pressure, or just giving the availability for these kids to have a cultural shift, to say that, yeah, you come out to the courts. We build courts in your community. We put the coaches there. And that level of professionalism that, Chris was saying, that his education, just doing it, we all need that. We all need to do that. We all need to get better at what we do. Because I do the educational courses every time they come up. It doesn't matter what. Yeah, I listen to the parents yell at the Larry Hour all the time when they're doing these things. But I do it because you you never should stop learning, and you never know it all. So we need those plugins at every level. So I'm looking up at them going, oh man, WTA, how do I get there? And they're looking down at me like, dude, I want to be home. Go travel while I come home. So that those shifts. So just having we had Michael Moore and
Chris Eubanks.
Chris Eubanks come out, and so Chris Eubanks is first of all 6'6". Michael Moore ain't much smaller. And the kids are just staring up at them. But I experienced, where else would they get that? How else could they see two professional kids? And it wasn't at the national campus, which is no mark on them. It was in their community, someplace that was tangible for them to get to and be able to see these people who are professional tennis players. So that, when we were kids, it was Katrina, right? Katrina and Lori, they would come to St. John, and we would go take the boat over to St. John and go watch them. Do their exhibitions and stuff like that. And that's the only tangible thing that we had, really, because there were no tournaments and stuff like that when we were kids. But these kids have the access, and we're trying to provide it to them, and they're responding. But we need more. It just needs to be more. It needs to be, like Chris said, cultural. It has to be a thing where we live in Florida. We're the Mecca. Why are these other things more important? And tennis.
Well, you touched on something really important, Albert, there, and I think it's come up before with why other sports have more of a profile, is the more we can get the professionals who have a high profile to come and to be in the community. I do think, some other sports do a really good job with that. And I put that on sort of USTA and our shoulders to say, we need to do a better job. And I know tennis is hard. You're on the road, you're traveling internationally. But when we have tournaments, when we have pro circuit, when we have other things, get out in the community and engage with these young people, because, they are.
Even tennis, even watching it on television. How did it get on television, right?
It's hard.
And you can watch the finals tonight, but you have to get a tennis channel to watch tennis.
Right.
You know when Coco is playing in order to see somebody. You got to know when Chris, Michael, all the other people that are out there that are playing are actually on court, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's very true, and that's really an issue across the board. And I think tennis is different in a lot of ways, and we like to say, but tennis is different. But when it comes to consumer behavior and really reaching new audiences, accessibility is key. And if you have to pay more to watch something than you do something else, and you don't see it every day, it really does impact. And once a year really isn't enough. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's another great point. I think I have like a whole page of information now on we could do 10 more podcasts on all of these topics that you guys brought up. I love it. Thank you all so much for sharing your time, your energy. The podcast is called Here to Serve, and I think the four of you are prime examples of what it means to serve others. So thank you so much for being on this podcast and for all that you do. And I look forward to seeing you all in your communities very soon. And I wish you all a very happy Juneteenth celebration and month of June. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you who are listening to the audio only version of this podcast, please be sure to check out USTA Florida's YouTube channel or our Facebook page, where you can see the video version. And of course, for all episodes of the Here to Serve podcast, including upcoming topics and dates, visit ustaflorida.com/here to serve. Thanks. Wonderful day.